I'm Kat Bailey, and I'm here at Tokyo Game Show. Right behind me is the Capcom booth, and I just got an opportunity to play Resident Evil Village on the PlayStation VR 2, Sony's brand new VR device for the PlayStation 5. Capcom's Resident Evil Village, which was released in 2021, is coming out on the PSVR 2 with a variety of other games. We got an opportunity to go hands-on, and here are our impressions. In the Resident Evil Village PlayStation VR 2, you might not be surprised to learn that Lady Dimitrescu, who was the breakout star of Resident Evil Village, plays a heavy role. You run into her very early on in the demo, where, of course, she towers over you, looking down at you. I have to say, an 8-foot vampire lady is quite impressive in PlayStation VR 2, and then she subsequently lifts you up and puts her hands through meat hooks, and so you get to look down on her as well. She leers into the camera. It's quite remarkable on the PlayStation VR 2's 4K screen. And then you get an absolutely disgusting scene in which you rip the hooks out of your hands and then you have to get down. It's the kind of moment that works really well in VR, and especially for a horror game like Resident Evil Village. So you're probably wondering, how did I think about the actual PlayStation VR 2? Well, I have to say that the screen is a big improvement over the PlayStation VR, and that really helps the actual clarity of the game, the visual fidelity. Resident Evil Village was already an amazing looking game on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X when it came out last year, and it's still one of the best looking next-gen games, and that really comes through on Sony's new VR headset as you get to see pretty much crystal clear visuals, and you can really appreciate the animation. You can enjoy the actual spookiness of the mansion while you're listening to it in 3D audio. My first thought when I was walking up that snowy, winding path was, wow, this is kind of the only way to play Resident Evil Village, in my honest opinion, which makes a lot of sense because Resident Evil 7, which is really in most ways the direct predecessor to this game, was also very impressive in VR. And horror games in general tend to do the best in virtual reality. Having said that, the PlayStation VR 2 does have some drawbacks. It is a wired headset, and as a result, it can feel a little bit awkward to be playing, while the PlayStation VR 2 is clearly a more powerful and much better headset. I think the wired aspect of it continues to be a major drawback for this particular platform. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit motion sick. I ultimately had to take a break for a little bit, and a lot of that is to do with that Resident Evil Village is a very motion heavy game. And this is an issue that has not been easily fixed in VR games to this point. I eventually sat down and I felt a little bit better, but the calibration was somewhat off, unfortunately, my build, so it looked like my head was disconnected from my body a lot of the time in this game. There were some awkward movements, especially with the knife when I was attacking enemies. So obviously room for improvement, but with Resident Evil Village coming out early next year, they still got some time to calibrate it. So what do I think about the combat? Well, as I already said, I found the knife a tad awkward, but it makes a lot of sense because the knife is not meant to be very powerful. The handgun, however, is much better. Sitting at your side, you reach down and you pick it up as you do in your typical VR game. And there is an elaborate reloading mechanic, which makes sense because this is meant to be a survival horror game. So you have to actually reach down for the bullets and then put them into the gun. I believe the gun can even jam in some cases, but the flip side is that you can actually use it to aim straight down the barrel and take out enemies with lots of headshots. So it feels a lot better in VR, as you would expect. You can also use the knife and the gun at the same time. I did not get an opportunity to do that, but it seems to me that the combat options have been greatly expanded in Resident Evil Village. When Resident Evil Village was released in early 2021, it gained a lot of praise for being kind of a roller coaster survival horror game with amazing graphics, and that really captured the feel of Resident Evil. And I think that's even more apparent, even clearer on the PlayStation VR 2. The actual tech is quite impressive. I was really impressed by the screen, as I was already saying, the eye tracking, the 3D audio, and I think that it is a clear step up from the PlayStation VR. Is it enough of a step up is a major question on my mind, because with the actual price point and it being wired and the fact that it sits at kind of an uncomfortable middle ground between a casual headset and a hobbyist headset, being able to find the market niche for the PlayStation VR 2 might be a challenge. But in the near term, I think Resident Evil Village is a really cool first experience to be having, especially if you're a Resident Evil fan, and especially if you are a survival horror fan. But in the meantime, there's lots more coverage to be found here at Tokyo Game Show 2022. I've been Kat Bailey, and for all the best of games, stick with IGN.